CardFlight tracks payment activity at over 70,000 small businesses that use their technology to accept and process payments. The company is also monitoring how the pandemic is changing consumer payment behaviors and is out with their latest report. Just help me understand what you notice in terms of the sensitivity of COVID cases and then corresponding spending.
So, Alex, we've certainly in the early first waves of COVID saw significant decreases in spending at small businesses across the board, across the country. But lately, in the past few months, we've seen much less sensitivity to closures, to spikes across the small businesses we serve. And I think, it goes to show that small businesses are changing how they operate, and consumers are certainly changing how they spend. But in general, I think consumers and small businesses alike are finding ways to move forward and to live through this.
Which areas have seen the biggest digital catch-up, Derek?
Certainly, well, so many of I don't know if this is digital, but certainly a lot of the biggest growth categories we've seen have been a lot of services businesses. So on-site technical services, people are really investing in their homes as they're spending more times in them. So certainly, whether it be plumbers or general contractors or repair people, I think consumers with the means are investing in their homes and making those improvements, or in some cases trading up to larger homes for those that have it. Whereas some of the bigger declines have been certainly clothing and apparel organizations, private transportation type sectors.
Yep. Unless you're buying sweatpants, so there's that. But there's also some difficulty, Derek, understanding what's going to happen when we get this kind of fiscal stimulus at the end of the year and we don't get any more unemployment checks, et cetera. On the one hand, people say, look, they've saved a ton. It's going to be fine. Savings rate is high. They have money to spend. The other is that we're going to see a real crimp in spending for many, many people. Have you noticed any sort of shift in spending as we head towards that?
I think both are true on balance, but it's really a barbell. You have people that, where unemployment is high and there's pockets of that and consumption is down and just people don't have the means, they're certainly spending less. And then you have other people in the market who have been able to, consumers that have maintained their jobs, they've moved to a fully remote stage, their stock portfolios are up. So those consumers have high levels of confidence in their spending, and how they're going to navigate through this holiday season is going to be different. But in general, I think consumer spending for people with the means is going to stay strong.
Can I just come back to my previous question and ask it in a slightly better way? I can't remember the last time I used money. Genuinely, yep. Notes and coins. How many of small businesses have changed the way that they accept payments? I'm really wondering what the lasting effect of COVID is going to be on the way and the efficiency in which these small businesses operate.
Absolutely. And so there's two major trends there, and it's kind of, it's basically how the in-person payments are taking place and then whether an in-person payment is necessary at all. So in terms of how the in-person payment is taking place, we've seen significant growth in contactless tap to pay. So we're seeing, we're more than 200% up in terms of the rate of contactless tap to pay transactions versus pre-COVID levels. So increasingly consumers are looking for that symbol, they're looking to tap, they're not looking to hand over their credit card to a merchant for the transactions that still take place in person. And then we're also seeing for a lot of businesses where it's not truly necessary to make it a face-to-face payment, they're decoupling the payment from the transaction itself. So you might imagine a house call for a plumbing repair. Historically that plumber might have taken out their smartphone at the end of the visit and used a card reader dongle, and you would hand your credit card to them to settle up on the spot. Well, now increasingly, you might be prepaying and making a deposit ahead of time, or you might be getting an invoice on a post-pay basis. I mean, we're seeing our card on file transactions are up 150%. Our invoice-based transactions are up 250%. So there's a theme here towards touch-free ways to pay, any way that's possible as, consumers and small business owners maybe trying to do business with one another, but, trying to avoid the physical contact.
I'm always aware that we should never waste a good crisis, and I'm always aware that we should look for the positives that come out of the kind of crises like the one we're experiencing at the moment. Small businesses are basically all about cash flow. And I'm wondering whether or not the small business sector becomes more robust if you are able to survive as a result of this crisis, because payment services are changing and accelerating, and therefore that cash flow is easier to manage almost on a sort of minute-by-minute basis.
Absolutely. And there was, I mean, we saw certainly, I mean, throughout this year, we've seen plenty of times of small business owners reinventing themselves, reinventing how they do business. And one trend that we saw over the middle of the year was as sales rebounded very strongly in terms of total dollar sales in our merchants, the rate of active merchants was slower to rebound, meaning of the merchants carrying on and doing business, they were doing more transactions for more dollars on average. And so the businesses that have been able to modernize, that have been able to adapt how they do business are certainly doing stronger. And we've been seeing them capturing a lion's share of the commerce that is happening.
How competitive is that space? And then how does that affect small businesses? More competition, better for their margins? If it's not, I wonder, because a lot of companies wouldn't take credit cards for so long, this is like back in the day, because you had to pay the fee. So where's that conversation with contactless payments?
Yeah, so I mean, just to give one example, so food places, you know, category within food and beverage for us, we're seeing 50% higher sales than we were pre-COVID. And I'm not saying restaurants across the US are selling 50% more, but we've seen a real share shift as our technologies have much more around touch-free ways to pay and kind of the ways consumers want to pay and the way merchants want to collect payment. And so we've seen a real share shift away from some of the legacy technologies, whether that be cash or even just a traditional payment terminal that, you know, is hardwired to the wall. As restaurants want to move to curbside and takeout and delivery and pay at table business models, they want more flexible ways of taking that payment.